Hey, good afternoon. Let me welcome you to the Tuesday, November 4th, 2008 joint public meeting of the Glendale City Council and the Glendale Housing Authority. Mr. City Clerk, could we call the roll for the council?
Council members Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Yusefian.
Here.
Mayor Draymond.
Here. And Mr. Authority Chair?
Yes, may you have a roll call for the authority, please?
Authority members Draymond.
Here.
Mincy.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Parazian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chairman Yusefian.
Here.
And Mr. Kasakian, could we have your report, please?
Certainly, the agenda for the November 4, 2008 joint public meeting of the Glendale City Council and the Glendale Housing Authority was posted on Thursday, October 30th, 2008 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Okay, thank you very much. And could we also hear the item at 1A and B?
At 1A is Director of Community Development and Housing, continued from October 28, 2008, regarding status of program planning for the fiscal year 2009-2010 CDBG, ESG, and Home Annual Action Plan. At 1A is Authority motion approving the fiscal year 2009-2010 CDBG program priorities. At B is Authority motion approving fiscal year 2009-2010 CDBG funding allocation plan for funding category and issuance of an RFP to the community and city departments for social service and capital improvement projects.
Thank you.
Did you want me to go ahead and read
I was
number
just
2,
about
Mr.
to say, why don't we go ahead and read 2A as well?
2 is Director of Community Development and Housing regarding status of the Quality of Life Indicators report, and at 2A is Council motion to receive and file the report and direct staff to continue to work with the Glendale Healthier Community Coalition.
Thank you very much. And as a housekeeping issue, Mr. City Attorney, we have 1A and B are authority items.
That's correct.
Correct. And 2A is the council motion.
Yes, and it should, the public should understand, the council, I believe, does, that the item at 2A is separate and distinct from the item at 1A and B.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Let me turn this over to, who is going to give our...
We'll go to Jess Duran, Assistant Director for Community Development and Housing. Jess?
Oh, there he is.
On item...
Mr. Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Starbird, Mayor Draymond, members of City Council, Chairman Yosefian, members of the Glendale Housing Authority. The gist of why we're here today is to request a review and approval of the program priorities for the fiscal year 09-10 Community Development Block Grant Program, and approval, or your review and approval of a proposed preliminary funding allocation plan by funding category as required by HUD, and then authorizing staff to issue a request for funding proposals to the community and to city departments based on the approved preliminary funding allocation plan. We are entering our 34th year of the CDBG program. Each year the city receives almost $6 million from HUD for community development and housing programs in our community. Those funds come in the form of the CDBG program, the Emergency Shelter Program, which we refer to as ESG, and the Home Program, which are projects targeted for housing. However, the CDBG entitlement has been dwindling over the last 5 years under the current federal administration. CDBG being the most prominent program in terms of the amount of funds available, the competitiveness of the funding, and the level of community participation, we will focus our program planning and today's discussion on the CDBG program. As you all know by now, the CDBG program is designed to benefit or to target funds to low-income families in low-income neighborhoods. Then per HUD's requirements to involve residents in the plan development process, a CDBG advisory committee is appointed by the City Council each year or each couple of years, and they have reviewed, the advisory committee has reviewed and approved the proposed program priorities and the funding allocation plan and the RFP application. We are projecting a CDBG funding allocation of $3,550,000 for fiscal year 09-10 as reflected on Exhibit 4, which is a spreadsheet of the proposed funding allocation plan. So we're projecting a HUD entitlement of $3.2 million for fiscal year 09-10, unappropriated funds of $350,000, which gives us the total of $3,550,000 available for 09-10. We're proposing administration of $640,000, which represents 20% of the entitlement, which is HUD's allowance. But when you factor in the SHP program, the Supportive Housing Program, which CDBG is also responsible for administering, that adds another $2.1 million, and that percentage comes down to 11%, what's required to administer both programs. And it's proposed to allocate the maximum allowance for public social services of $480,000. And then it's proposed to allocate $2,430,000 for capital neighborhood improvement projects. And that includes $2,149,000 for pre-designated city capital improvement projects, comprised of the code enforcement program and an allocation of $400,000, $1,500,000 for the Pacific Park Pool project, our Section 108 loan repayment, which was part of the original Edison Pacific project, of $249,000, which would leave a balance of undesignated funds of $281,000, which is proposed to be made available to the community for community projects for fiscal year 9-10 under a competitive RFP. So that comprises the proposed funding allocation plan as reviewed by the CDBG Advisory Committee and following HUD's parameters for developing a plan. We did do a modest level needs assessment this year as required by HUD. We received direct input from 74 residents in Glendale. Based on that input, the Advisory Committee determined that the program priorities are pretty much consistent with what they were last year and what they currently are in the city's current 5-year consolidated plan that's on file with HUD. And those priorities include youth programs, youth employment programs in general, crime and public safety, child care, senior services, graffiti, fair housing, and in terms of neighborhood improvements, what we hear over and over again is parks and code enforcement in our neighborhoods. So subject to Council's approval of the funding allocation plan and program priorities, the next step in the plan development process would be to issue an RFP, and so that would be the next thing that we do. And that would begin this Thursday, subject to the Council's approval. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Duran. Let me go to my colleagues on the council. Let me start on this end. Mr. Weaver.
Jess, would you please clarify what you mean on page 7, social services, next year staff does not anticipate receiving program income? What are you saying?
Yes, Councilman Weaver. Several years ago, about 15 years ago, we used to use CDBG funds for residential rehabilitation loans. The maximum term on those loans was 15 years. As those loans get paid off early, the bank servicing those loans sends the city a rebate check. And last year we were very lucky. We got a couple of substantial rebate checks, which totaled $68,000. This year we're not anticipating any of those rebate checks. So that would be program income.
And the other question, I see speakers here to speak on individual line items. As I understood, we're not here to do that today.
Well, to be fair, Mr. Weaver, on the speaker cards that I have, I don't know that those speakers are here on line item.
Well, I recognize some people in the audience. I just want to make sure the audience understood what we are here for.
Right. Okay. That's what we're here for. We're here for that
Okay.
little heralded trumpet. Ms. Parazian, I didn't mean to skip you.
Okay, I have two questions. Understand, did I get correctly that CDBG Advisory Committee has nothing to do with the ESG program?
Correct. The ESG program is overseen by a committee of the Glendale Homeless Coalition.
Yeah, I know. And the second question, is CDBG unprogrammed funds are the same as the CDBG reprogrammed funds?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Quintero.
Glad to have a few comments. I'm still not happy 20% for administration. That to me seems awfully high.
And I'd still like to whittle that down and use it for services, if that's where we could put it, or for capital improvement projects. Then in terms of the $281,000 that's undesignated and available under an RFP for the capital improvement, I'd like to see some of that money go to the city's capital improvement projects. I think we can use them at Pacific for the pool or somewhere else. I mean, the city's obviously tightening its belt, and instead of 281 being undesignated, I'd like to reduce that number.
Did you get that, Mr. Duran? Are you someone's keeping score here as we go along?
Taking notes.
Okay, we'll come back to all of those items that council may have in the way of comments and input as we go. Mr. Najarian.
Thank you. I like Mr. Quintero's idea. However, I'm not sure we could totally freeze the community out of the capital improvement funds program, or maybe partially, I think he was saying. But let me just state unequivocally to all those commissioners out there, do not touch the Pacific Park pool money. I know it's a tempting target for something that isn't built yet, but I will look very unfavorably on anyone that tries to do that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Najarian. Mr. Yusefian.
Unequivocally touch that pool money as much as you want. I'll look favorably on that.
Sure. That, folks, is what we
so
call,
the balances it out.
Yes, that's what we call sending a clear message.
Right. I never liked pre-designating. I voted against it last time. I'll vote against it again this time. I think we have commissioners. They got a good brain on their shoulders, and I think they can make a decision what is appropriate for the community. After all, they're the ones who listen to the community's needs. Nevertheless, I have one question from you out there. The unprogrammed, the unappropriated funds, that $350,000, where did that come from? What program didn't get funded?
Councilman Yosefian, $100,000 of that came from funds that were recaptured from two projects where the money was given back. One was from the Alark Musical Society, who decided...
Was this a capital improvement?
Yeah, it was all capital funds.
And the rest of the 250 is also capital? Okay.
HUD allows to use unprogrammed funds only for capital improvement projects. You can't use it for social services or administration or anything else.
Okay. The 18% that is for the 15% that is for entitlements, the 480 is the percentage of the money that includes the 350 in it, or not?
No, the 3.2. It's a percentage of the 3.2.
It's a 3.2. Okay, yeah. So you did not include that in there. Okay. All right. Then you can't use that.
Mr. Yusefian?
That's it. I guess, as I said, the only thing that I would ask the commissioners to keep in mind is this is a very lean year. I mean, there's a lot of needs for pantries and so on and so forth. People are really struggling. So keep that in mind as you deal with that. This is different than 2 years ago or even last year. We need to kind of keep that in mind.
Okay, Mr. Mincy.
I certainly agree with your last statements there. as far as the administration, 20%, it seemed to me, isn't that a fixed figure? Don't we have to have it at 20%?
Mr. Mincy, no, we don't. However, it's not really 20%, it's really 11% because those funds administer all of the homeless programs as well.
Oh, I see. 11%, that sounds better. I do like what everybody has said so far as taking the seriousness of it and the importance of the committee and the responsibility we put on you. And when you report, we take that very seriously also.
Mr. Mincy, thank you very much. Any comments I have, I'm going to hold till the end. Let's go to the public. We have a couple of speakers on item 1A and B, and we have a speaker on 2A. So let's start with 1A and B. Mr. Milano. Excuse me? Oh, 3 minutes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Good afternoon, Mayor Draymond, members of the City Council, members of the Housing Authority. My name is Herbert Milano. I came here to speak with regard to the portion of this particular appropriation for the public social service programs. As I have seen during the years, especially the last few years, we have seen a continual reduction in the type of in the amount of the funds that are going to these social service programs. And the answer that I hear all the time is, well, the city has to reduce its expenses, but the city never really takes money from the general fund into this particular program. This is all HUD money. I took a look at the city of New York, and I noticed that they take money from their general fund to augment some of these programs. We don't do that. So when we're strapping ourselves with regard to economic issues, the city is not sending any of its funds over from any of the other funds that we have over to these funds that are controlled or provided by HUD. And that's what I'm going to suggest. I'm going to suggest that we augment the fund by 20%, $96,000, from the general fund into this fund, because I believe that many of these organizations that are providing that very last safety net absolutely need it, primarily for the purpose, it is my suggestion, to give these organizations sustainability. I personally have seen a couple of these organizations and know that many of them have difficulty sustaining the individuals who are administering or managing the organizations, and they're not able to sustain quality employment for these organizations because there's never an assured funding source in the future. So who's going to take a job that says you may have it for 3 months or 6 months? And it is absolutely necessary. My suggestion is 20% because I am fairly assured that they could definitely use those funds. Does the city have $96,000 to spare from its general fund? Well, I could go through the list of things that I would suggest that you could look at where we have very easily decided to fund. Whether it was $40,000 for the high-speed rail, funding, or many others that I could take a look at. This is something that is giving the city of Glendale's residents direct and immediate assistance on issues that could very well be exacerbated. And that is my suggestion, to appropriate $96,000 from the general fund over to give sustainability to these programs. Some might say we've never done this before, or we may go down the slippery slope, as some people would say. But I think it is time to at least provide these organizations continual year-to-year sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. Andrew Gross.
Another item.
Oh.
He's here for the
you're on the housing
Garfield
project.
Gardens
Okay.
project. Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right. That is my only card on those items then. All right, let me go back to my colleagues, see if there's anything they want to add. Let me check with Mr. Duran, wherever he went, there he is, to see whether he has all of the input and comments from council that he needs. Let me start with, Mr. Weaver. Yes. Have your hand up.
Okay, I won't make people happy, has been said, we're living in rough economic times now. And it's very well to think of building things that I consider beyond the necessary means in these times. And I will not support a pre-designation of $1.5 million for the pool. If and when it is built, it's going to cost us over $500,000 annually out of the general fund to operate and maintain it. Those funds have not been identified yet or into the future. So until this economy turns around, while it'd be nice to have a pool, I think that those monies could be left in park and recreation for other things, like a mini park down near, is it the Maryland Garfield project? A lot less cost to maintain that than putting it into a pool that only operates in the warm weather, not like it is now, and costs $500,000 a year to maintain. So if I have to vote against this entire thing because of this pre-designation, I will do so.
Okay. Ms. Perazzi, anything to add? Mr. Najarian.
Yeah, I guess I have to come to the swimming pool's defense once again. There's one thing that this community lacks that almost every other community in the entire county and Southern California region has, and that is a municipal pool. We are depriving our children of the ability to learn how to swim, to learn life safety skills, to compete in sports, to have fun on summer days. The pool will be used year-round. It is planned to be located in a high, what do you call that area? The high poverty area, or the census tract with high density census tract.
CDB eligible.
It will be used by adults who need to exercise and who will swim from, that pool will be in use from 6 o'clock to 9 p.m., 10 p.m. until we kick them out. It will be used by seniors who will use it for aerobics, water aerobics classes. This is one community resource that we lack. It's a shame that the third largest city in Los Angeles County does not have a pool. We have closed 3 of our previous municipal pools to delay and to place the priority of a pool on a back burner and say that this money should be somehow put towards some other project. Well, then I challenge you to find another capital project which is more worthy, which will be used by more children, adults, and seniors, that will provide life-saving skills that will make the quality of life better for every single one of our residents than a pool. Please let me know if you find out what can serve that purpose. So I think it's incumbent that we maintain our commitment to the Pacific Park pool and move on with it, and not attempt to take out our carving knives and carve out that money.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Najarian. Mr. Quintero.
I want the pool even more than he does. So, no, seriously, that is the one single project that I think will make the most impact on that section of Glendale, not just the immediate neighborhood, but South Glendale in general. And I just have a feeling that people will come from all over Glendale. So I'm for absolutely building it as soon as possible, doing a good job while we're working out the design. We want to have something that's going to appeal to multiple age levels and so forth. And that was one of the things that I was talking about in terms of we have $281,000 in capital improvement. We could, at a bare minimum, take 150 of it and move it towards the pool project. But I support this idea. I think it was a terrible mistake, as I've mentioned many times in the past, to take that original pool out. But having said that, the pool we're getting in return is going to be far superior to what was there. So if there's enough interest, I would move to try to at least get $150,000 out of that 281 and move it towards the pool project.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Yusefian.
Well, as I said, I have an issue with predesignation. I have no problem leaving the numbers at where they are, where it is. I just don't like to pre-designate it. I think the members of the board are here. They're hearing what we have to say. I would like to give them the latitude of making the decision. So I'm not one of those people who are saying if there's money put toward a pool, I'm going to vote against it. But then again, I'm not going to tell you that if you had another worthy project that was really pressing, and if you needed to pull $50,000 out of this place in order to make sure that project happens, which has equally provides services to either elderly or children or so on and so forth, I do not want to handcuff you. In the end of the day, I think one thing we need to realize on this council is that ultimately whatever decision the board makes, the CDBG board makes, they advise us, and we ultimately approve that, we modify that, or whatever we want to do to that. But I would like to give them the benefit of the doubt of at least going out there, getting the RFPs, looking at them, vetting it out, and then make their recommendations, and then we will take it from there. So that's where I am on. And I think $280,000 is not a lot when you have a lot of community needs that are going to be requiring that. But I have a feeling this year you're going to see a lot of people coming in and requesting money for just basic necessities, housing, food, filling the pantries, clothing. That's the way it is. Unfortunately, the federal government passed $1 trillion worth of bailout for all the banks and the Wall Street, but for the public out there on the Main Street, there is nothing, especially the ones that are way below the Main Street.
Okay. Mr. Mincy.
That's a hard subject because if we start giving money, first of all, if we are going to have a pool and we give the money away, we're not going to have a pool. And I think it really is important to have a pool. On the other hand, I know our economic situation now is so different. Everybody needs money. But if we start taking away from the pool, they'll end up, there won't be anything. There won't be a pool. So
May not have to be as big. May not have to be as big.
Well, yeah, but if you have an
afford it.
inferior product, then we're never going to be happy with it either. You want something at least a
Do you want a
pride.
Bentley or do you want a Mercedes?
Gentlemen,
Which one's inferior?
gentlemen, we're not going to design a pool this afternoon, so...
Or a car.
Or a car.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Weaver.
Could you ask staff how much has been set aside for that pool already?
I think you did. Let's see if we can get
Well, not $1.5 million.
See if we can get an answer. No, I mean, I think you've asked the question. Let's see if we can get an answer. Mr. Duran, did you hear the question?
I'm sorry,
How much
Weaver, would
money
you
has
repeat?
already been set aside for the pool?
including the 910 proposed allocation, 3.6 in CDBG.
3.6 million already set aside.
Correct.
Mr. Starbird?
Yeah, just to note, I think, as I recall, your CIP allocation is in the neighborhood of 5.6. With your last review of design, we're bringing back to you a couple of different options that could take you from 5.6 up to $10 million, depending on which options you took. You recall the steps, additional lanes, those all add additional costs. So, in fact, I just saw some of those preliminary designs last week. They're coming to you, I think, at your next council meeting.
Okay.
I think you have 5.4 or 5.6 in the CIP.
All right.
Thank
you.
Including these funds. Pardon me. I'm sorry.
Thank you. All right. I'm sorry, Madeline, did you have your... Mr. Chapshin, did you have your... do you have something you wanted to add to this this pool design session that seems to have broken out in the middle of this joint meeting? No. Okay. Let me add a couple of things. We talked about, we keep talking about the loss of the public pool at Civic Park. We also lost the Verdugo Plunge, which we all know, as some people used to call it, the keyhole. We also lost the pool at Maple Park. We also lost the pool at Fremont Park. We had other pools in the city parks as well. Some were waiting pools, some were full facility pools. I don't know about all the rest of you. And I'm not going to get into a debate about pre-designation or not. All I'm going to say is that's going to be a very, very high priority for me. That is, making sure that pool happens. I grew up in this city where at a time and place where I didn't have the benefit of going out into my backyard to swim. Right? I didn't have the benefit of growing up in a household with air conditioning. So a swimming pool was very important to me, thank you, and my siblings, and we found our way by bicycle down to the Verdugo Plunge. That's where we were able to go swim. This is important, and I'm not also going to get into the process for myself as an individual council member trying to slice and dice the baby here and now. I don't think that's the purpose of this meeting. I think everybody has indicated a preference, and it doesn't sound any different than our discussions on the pool, and that's been a separately agendized item. I think we all know this is something of great importance to Mr. Najarian because he believes that it is important to our constituents. I certainly agree with him. Mr. Quintero does, clearly, so the rest of my council colleagues. But as to, pre-designating, that's kind of a different debate. But I wanted to also comment on one other thing. There's a phrase that Mr. Milano used when he was speaking about the safety net. Some of those items are a safety net, and let's be honest, some of them are not. Mm-hmm. Let's get real with some of this. I've only had the opportunity as an elected official to deal with the CDBG coming to the council once. That was the last go-round. Prior to that, I was sitting out in the audience or watching at home to see this. Again, let's get real. We know that some of the things that were on there that were designated for funds have nothing to do with the safety net, and some of them really have nothing to do with even addressing the kind of dire needs that Mr. Yusefian was talking about. Clothing, food, basic services, So this is going to be a lean year. I said it before. I'm going to repeat it. I don't think any of my colleagues think any differently. It's going to be a lean year, and we're going to be looking, just like the committee itself is going to be looking with a magnifying glass, so are we. So, but, just in terms of the pool, again, to me that's a big issue, a big quality of life issue, is that pool, aside from the safety issues. Anyhow, that's the end of my little speech. Let's see if there's any other input. Mr. Weaver.
Just for full disclosure, when I was growing up, we had no pool, no air conditioning, no TVs.
And we didn't even grow up in the same neighborhood.
That's right.
No cars.
And I used to go to the keyhole to swim. Teenagers didn't have cars when I was growing up.
Was there fire?
Right,
Was there fire?
So,
yes, they had invented fire, I believe. Okay. All right. Any other input from council? Mr.
I think I made it very clear several times, and I think you made it even more clear on the issue of the community projects. As you look at those numbers and you look at some of those programs, keep in mind what's really necessary. The safety net is the most important, to me at least. That's what I'll be looking at. I don't think I have to explain it to you. You're all geniuses. That's why we put you there. So just deal with it.
Okay. Mr. Duran, do you believe you have all you need from these joint bodies and then some? Or?
With the motions, he will.
Yeah, well...
Yes, with the motions I will.
I assume you mean motions and not emotions.
No, with the motions at 1A and B.
But I want to make sure that Mr. Duran has made whatever notes that he needs.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you for asking that. And we have the advisory committee members here, so they're also hearing you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, do we have them? Yes, sir.
I would like to, I can't actually move it for the authority since I'm the chair.
That's correct.
I will move it, A and B.
can you separate those?
Let's stop at one moment. Let's go to Mr. Howard.
Well, first, you've got a request to separate the motions. That request needs to be honored. Number two, the motion at 1B, there is a date that needs to be changed. It's a language which notes about a little beyond 50% down, as further amended by the Housing Authority on November 4th, 2008. It was originally October 28th when the matter was continued.
All right.
1A, am I correct? I can
Yes.
move.
Second.
We
There's
have
a motion and a second on the authority for 1A. Maybe have a roll call for 1A, please.
That was moved by Authority Member Mincy and second by Najarian.
Yes.
Thank you. Authority Members Raymond,
Yes.
Mincy,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Karazian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Chairman Yusefian.
Aye. Is there a motion on 1B or modified version that says no pre-designation? But you still have to have the RFP section in there, correct? Because we still got to do an RFP, it's just that we don't designate or we designate. Mr. Weaver, want to make a motion?
I said that I would not pre-designate. I don't think I said I was misunderstood. I didn't say I was clearly voting against $1.5 million, but you're going to have to convince me by looking at all other options on that money, whether to vote for it or not when it comes time. So I could live with eliminating the pre-designation,
Chair,
but I don't know if there's a majority here.
All right, well, we'll find out.
may I ask for a clarification?
Yes.
So if I understand you correctly, Mr. Weaver, what you're saying is that winning your vote, so to speak, if someone wanted to persuade you, they would have to still do that, but you're not precluding
That being a component to study.
so you're not insisting on a pre-designation. You
I
are
just don't want
simply saying-
pre-designation.
Okay.
I want our committee to have more of or commission to have more of an open say on looking at alternatives and recommendations.
Thank you, Mr.
Ultimately,
Chair.
we modify.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is
So I'll
that
make that motion.
There's a motion.
I'll
There's a
second that.
There's a motion, a second. Roll call.
One second.
Clarity on the motion, I'm not certain.
Eliminating the pre-designation
We're just not
category.
pre-designating. We're just,
So the motion is essentially using the language in the motion as further amended by the Housing Authority to eliminate pre-designation.
right.
And if I can, Mr., to understand then, the RFPs will go out, giving the impression that that money is available for any groups to submit a proposal on.
They can read the news press tomorrow, no, that's not true.
Well, but they'd have to, otherwise the staff's being directed to issue RFPs unless you want to somehow modify the direction.
But the reality is that the commission understands what we're talking about. So they would look at all of those
Shaking their head
things,
no.
and they will make recommendations to us, and then we will
Let's,
vote on final.
Mr. Duran, I think, has leapt to the podium and
And he's back.
Blake,
Here it says.
Ms. Blake.
I just wanted to be clear that you are, by taking that action, you are then requiring, for example, the Parks Department to submit a proposal to compete with community projects.
So far,
Let's see what's out there.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's just stop for a minute. So
That's
far,
true.
that's right. So far, we just have a motion.
Right.
We don't even have a second. So let's.
And there was Authority
If
Member
I
Mincy.
understood
A
it
motion
right.
and a second. All right.
And I guess staff is asking for clarification.
Right. And I think they've made their reasoning known. Mr. Duran, did you want to add something?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, so when we publish the RFP per HUD's regulations, we will indicate that $2,400,000 is available to the community and city departments for capital improvement
Once again,
projects.
if the motion passes, this is only a motion on the floor,
Yes.
so...
All right. Mr. Quintero.
Yeah, and I'm
I'm
going to
sorry.
vote, and I'm going to vote against the motion. I don't think there's any sense in having community groups apply for funds that clearly the majority of the city council wants to use in a well-deserved pool project for low-income neighborhoods. So be voting against it.
All right. Mr. Najarian.
I agree with Mr. Quintero. It is simply not fair to these groups who may think that they've got a fair shot at $2 million plus, and at the end of the day be denied because they see that the council has put some of the money into a pool. I think we need to be upfront with them and not lead them along and give them the impression that there are millions of dollars to be obtained and all they want is a small piece of that. I will be voting against the motion unless there's a pre-designation.
Okay.
Okay.
Are there any other speakers on this issue? Before I turn it back to my colleague, Mr. Yusefian, who's the chair of the Housing Authority, this is
There's a
very
motion,
strange.
a motion and a second.
Let me say that as I made the second, feeling like that's still there, that money for that pool is still there. It's not in concrete, if I can use that, but it's still there. Yeah, it's still there. And it's not like, let's advertise, here's some extra money. And I said before, I don't want to, like, keep using money. I believe in the pool. I think it's very important. But that was the second. I mean, that was my thinking when I seconded that motion. Am I correct?
Yes.
Or am I incorrect?
Yes.
Ms. Blake?
Excuse me, Mr. Mincy. Well, I just wanted to make sure Mr. Mincy was crystal clear. If you second the motion, that money is not there. There's general sentiment in support of it, but that money is not there. That money is then made available to the community.
Which Parks and Rec will also put in an
Okay.
application.
That's correct.
And the commissioners know that we are more in tune with the pool, and when it would be crazy for them to turn around and give no money to the pool.
Just the difference between being
Right.
definitive and leaving things more open.
Okay, roll call.
Authority members Draymond,
Excuse me, we have a flag on the play, folks. Sorry, Mr. Howard.
To the yellow flag, and again, it's for purposes of clarification. The pool project is not the only project that would be affected by the non-predesignation code enforcement. In addition, there's also the payback of the loan, which is in there as predesignated as well, but that has to be paid back into that.
That's not up for discussion.
And I should point out that under Robert's Rules of Order, the seconder of a motion is not obligated to vote in the affirmative. Should the seconder of a motion choose not to vote in the affirmative.
Roll call. Can we get there now?
Authority members Draymond,
No.
Mincy,
No.
Najarian,
No.
Brazilian,
No.
Quintero,
No.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian.
Aye. Motion fails. Is there a second motion?
I'd like to move the motion with the pre-designations in concrete as indicated in the staff report.
Second.
There's a motion for 1B as written, with modification as Mr. Scott talked about the date. Is there a second?
Yes, there was.
There was a motion and second. Roll call.
Authority members Draymond,
Yes.
Mincy,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Brazilian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
No.
Chairman Yusefian.
No, motion carries. The mayor, it's yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yusefian. All right. We have an item at 2A, and we have a speaker. Let me go to the speaker. It's Herbert Milano, 3 minutes. Thank you, Ms. Brazil.
Go ahead, start. It's on.
Mr. Milano, let's hold the clock for a second. Mr. Milano, let's take 1 second and let some of the folks out of the room. It's a little distracting. So, folks, if you could, we still have a meeting going on here, so if you... Thank you. Okay, Mr. Milano.
Mayor Draymond, members of the Housing Authority, my name is Herbert Milano. What I wanted to present to you today is a quick display of the SharePoint program that allows people to collaborate on a project. If you take a look at the very top section here, it says www.glendalettoday.org. So that's all you need to do to put that on the address, put the URL, and you will come up. You'll be asked for an ID and a password. I created a couple of public IDs and passwords. They're very easy to remember. The ID would be Glendale, like Glendale 2 or Glendale 3 or Glendale 4. And the password would be today. That's very simple. So if I were to exit and try to come back, you will see that you will be prompted for an ID and a password. The main idea is to provide anyone else within the city or the city manager or yourselves to at least be able to access this page. And you can see you can go in there and share documents, or you can link into information that is relevant. Here we have the Santa Monica Sustainable City Report. I have an online book called The Social Health of the Nation, Statistics Nationwide Concerning Social Issues. You could actually take a look at a discussion board, and the discussion boards would be right here. So it's fairly simple. There are general discussions, and you can just basically clip in, and you'll be asked to, as a reader, you'll be able to see the discussions that are taking place.
Would you repeat the,
Well, let's wait until
just
Mr. Milano gets through his presentation, and let's ask him questions after, if we could.
Very well.
1 o'clock.
Yes, I've got 24 seconds here. The idea is that there are options within the left side that allows you to basically take a look at information. You'll be able to see what announcements have taken place. You'll see what events are taking place. So it allows you to have a significant level of transparency to know what the committee is doing and what documents are being uploaded. It's fairly easy. GlendaleToday.org. Any questions?
Okay. Mr. Mincy.
got my question
Oh,
answered?
okay. Very good. Other
Is that
questions?
working right now?
Yes, that's a live access.
Okay, and the Quality Life group is using it?
We are beginning to use it. I presented it to them yesterday. I appreciate the opportunity to be of service, to the city of Glendale in this regard. And my hope is that everyone begins to get acclimated. No one has, except for Mr. Sam Engel, everyone is new to the use of this particular service. And by the way, it's the service that is available internally through your own IT department. Unfortunately, the restrictions on security and names and so forth is such that it could not be made available to outside entities. So, but it's once you begin to get acclimated, you will see that it could be an excellent tool for you to use for perhaps other areas where you want public input or monitor what a committee is doing, for example, or a commission.
Mr. Yusefian.
No, I think it's a very good tool. I'm glad you found this and brought it to our attention.
Mr.
It will be
Najarian.
used.
Are there going to be opinions posted on here?
Yeah, and that's the whole idea, that you could have announcements, or you can share the documents, or you could actually have a discussion session. And if you were to go to the discussion session, I created one just to start the process. And I posted it here, here's the text. We discussed on Monday, November 3rd, how we can adopt the city's districts, meaning the police districts, as a reporting parameter. For example, the use of alcohol by youth in southern Glendale, in a particular district, or the lack of health insurance by families in that district. So if you wanted to participate, then I can give you an ID and a password so that you can collaborate.
So you're the webmaster, so to speak, for this?
And I can assign, right now I am, and I can give that assignment as well to anyone who wants to administer or help administer the site.
Will you be sharing on the website some of the criticism that you level to the council on a weekly basis, or will you be totally non-critical of council?
That's up to negotiation, I think.
You mean on the website, but not here, I
Yes,
assume.
I am assuming this is for the work product.
That's correct. The idea is that as
So
committee
it's not going
members...
to be like a blog type of a thing. It's to create the work product, basically.
Correct, and only the individuals who are members can, at this point in time, can update and include information. The idea is that you could sense the collaboration that is taking place, the discussion and the ideas, so that if you, Mr. Najarian, wanted to say, well, there's something that that maybe is to your preference for them to look at, then I could give you an ID and a password so you could, join in the conversation. But the conversation cannot be joined by anyone, and I'm sure that all of us are going to have, I'm sure Mr. Sam Engel is going to direct some protocols so that we can keep the conversation non-accusatory.
All right. I do have to ask us, though, if there are any other questions, let's take them quickly now. I want to get to the actual item at 2A.
All right, and I'm actually going to ask some questions from Sam about this.
Please also know we have another item coming. So, all right, Mr. Engel, if you would, please. Thank you, Mr. Milano.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Chair Yusefian, members of the Housing Authority, Sam Engel, Neighborhood Services Administrator. We were asked to give an update on the progress of the quality of life indicators. Mr. Milano has given you, during his oral communication, an update on one part that's actually kind of one of the tools that is going to be used. Let me back up and talk a little bit about the indicators, where they came from. Real briefly, it's a project that emerged out of the Glendale Healthier Community Coalition. Councilmember Yusefian and members of the Housing Authority had asked that we pursue more diligently updating the 2001 document that was prepared and come back with a timeline for presentation of an updated document. We presented that proposed timeline last summer. This report is to give you a status of where we are right now. As of yesterday, we've had 2 meetings of the full advisory committee. The advisory steering committee was formed as a result of a community call for participation. It includes representatives of city departments, it includes community representatives, it includes representatives of other organizations in the community, including Glendale Unified School District and a significant number of nonprofits in the community, as well as the Los Angeles County Department of Health. This group serves as the steering committee in the process of revising our indicators document from 2001, this. We've done promotion for this up to this point, including press releases, which have been covered in the Glendale News Press. It's being promoted on the city's website, and it is also being promoted on GTV6. Within that steering committee that's meeting on a regular basis, they've broken down into interest groups. The interest groups are working on each one of the individual elements that is involved here, and they have a couple of tasks that they have to work on within these individual interest groups. And interest groups can range, I think there's one group that has 6 on them. The smallest group consists of 4 people that are working through these things. One, they're to secure other people that have specific expertise in what that group might be studying. 2, they're to look at what is in this particular document and use 3 M's and a W to evaluate them. Is the particular measurement meaningful? Is it actually measurable? You notice in some of these we actually have lists. It's not an actual measurable statistic. And then ask the question, what's missing? And then finally, the W is, when we're done with this and everything's said and done, are there things we wish we could have found out, but the data just isn't being collected in our community? So that's the process we're going through right now. All of the subcommittees have met at least once. Some of them are going on their 2nd or 3rd meetings. Our next meeting of the full steering committee to come back together and synthesize all of this will be in December. What Mr. Milano showed you is a product called SharePoint. And SharePoint is a part of the Microsoft suite, and it's used for project collaboration. We attempted to work through the city's IS department because it's available to us working internally as city employees when we're working on a collaborative project. The issue that we have in doing a community-wide project is that it opens a portal into the city's network for public to come in, and it creates a security breach in terms of the network. So what Mr. Milano has done is set up an independent, and he's actually hosting that opportunity to run a collaborative use of SharePoint independently. He's hosting that. It's run independently. He debuted it this time yesterday, so the information that's up there is very minimal at this point, but I anticipate that as each committee comes up with their stuff, it's going to be up there working on. It is not a wide open game. It is open to the people who are involved in it. Much as a project team, the project team participates in that. And as we envision it, we're going to be doing that. The administrator of that will be the administrator of the project, and in answer to Mr. Najarian's question, it's going to be moderated very closely. I'm getting familiar with it as much as I'm the only one who has used it. My experience with it is minimal at this point, and I'm learning it as we go along. We anticipate getting all of the data collection done by the 1st of January. Some things that are very exciting right now. County of Los Angeles is completing their health needs assessment for the county. They will have data very specific to Glendale, and that will give us some very good information, and that their report is anticipated to be published the first week of January. We will take the next 6 to 8 weeks after all of the data is reported by the committee to actually put it into a document format like this. We anticipate that it will be presented to you and to the community the 3rd or 4th week of March. That's my update for today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Engel. I appreciate your update for today and every day. Let me ask if there are any further questions or comments from the council, and let me also just remind my colleagues that, again, we have another item coming up, and we are already 40 minutes behind schedule. So,
We're making progress, that's the main thing.
Well,
But something is...
Moving along very quickly,
Yes,
actually.
we are making progress, but I'm sure there are some specific questions. So, Mr.
You have any cards? Not on
We have no questions.
2A.
We've already heard the card.
All right.
If there are no further comments, so there are no further speakers, we do have a council motion on the agenda at 2A.
I think Mr. Weaver moved it, and I'll second.
No, there was no motion, there wasn't.
Dave moved it.
There was no second, but there is
They moved it, and I seconded it.
All right.
Okay.
The council motion.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Kasakian, if you would, please.
Council members Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero? Weaver?
Aye.
Yusefian?
Aye.
Mayor Draymond?
Yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Move to adjourn for the council.
We're adjourned.
Move for the authority.
Second.
We're adjourned.
Move for the housing.
Second.